Hello and welcome to the 2017 Personal Health Summit. If you're looking to become healthier and happier than you've ever been before, then you've come to the right place. The Personal Health Summit features an international collaboration of leading doctors, scientists, researchers and health ambassadors, all working to change the conversation and transform world health. Every expert here is to share with you their knowledge, wisdom and expertise to help you learn, grow and become empowered to make informed choices and take control of your health and your life. Our mission, first and foremost, is to help you recognize that you are unique, that there are many different avenues to achieving and maintaining optimal health, and that there is one that's right for you at this very moment in time. Being informed is being empowered. And when you have the right information, you have the power to change your health, your happiness, and your life. The Personal Health Summit is made possible by the generous support of the Ultimate Human Foundation, who's committed to educating and empowering people all over the globe to be proactive about their personal health, providing truly personalized health solutions for every human being on the planet with accessibility and affordability, and orchestrating and nurturing a global gathering of the world's key health experts and thought leaders at the vanguard of their respective fields, where solutions can be found to transform the future health of humanity. The Personal Health Summit is also made possible by PH360.me, the world's most advanced health assistant that interacts with you via your smartphone, just like a best friend who can calculate the best nutrition and lifestyle choices to most favorably and easily influence your unique hormones, genes, and personal state of health, empowering you to make easy, accurate lifestyle decisions to improve your sleep, energy, mood, weight, digestion, and well-being. Now, on to today's guest. Howard Martin was integral in launching the Global Coherence Initiative, a science-based, co-creative project to unite people in heart-focused care and intention to facilitate the shift in global consciousness from instability and discord to balance, cooperation, and enduring peace. Howard Martin serves as its steering committee member and spokesperson. He's conducted keynote presentations and training programs for Fortune 100 companies, government agencies, all 4 branches of the US military, and has shared scientific research linking heart function with health, emotional well-being, and intelligence on CNN headline news, Billboard, the Boston Globe, and many more media outlets. For more on Howard Martin and HeartMath, please check out heartmath.org. Howard, it's great to see you again. I always look forward to our conversation, both online and offline. Thank you so much for joining us today for this important conversation all about the heart and what's sure to be, as always, an incredibly informative conversation. Howard, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, hello, mate. Good to be with you again today. It's a pleasure as always. Appreciate the opportunity to have these conversations and share them with others. So I want to welcome everybody who's listening, wherever you are around the world.
Fantastic. Well, Howard, let's jump straight into understanding something, just a little bit about the background and the science of the heart. It's and always an interesting conversation. The heart, this thing that eludes us, it just sits in our chest. We understand from a cardiologist's point of view what happens, but what about the real life part of the intelligence of the heart? Can you tell us a little bit about the science behind the heart and how this actually influences us or interacts with our daily life and our daily experience of life?
Sure, I'll be glad to. I mean, when we started HeartMath, we were putting together a system really of tools and techniques and methods that we could share with others, where they could make contact with this core part of themselves that's been called heart since there's been humans on the planet. And then to bring that forward into their daily lives in meaningful ways and take it out of just spirituality or philosophy and turn it into something that was visceral and real. And so we worked for many years in obscurity, developing ourselves and developing a connection to what we now call the intelligence of the heart. When we started HeartMath, we realized we better get a bridge that goes between what people feel about the heart and what they've read about spiritually, etc., and that daily living component. We chose science to be the bridge. And the reason we chose science is because empirical understanding adds to the power of belief. When that power of belief is stronger, then the power of the effectiveness of that belief is obviously stronger. So for years, we've been doing scientific research on such a wide variety of subjects: heart-brain-body communication, energetic connectivity between all living systems, social science research on changes in psychological nature and organizational functioning, and just goes on with the degree of research we've done. And that's been really cool. And it's made heart certainly very interesting to many people that were writing it off as something sweet or sentimental. So today we do a lot of training programs in mainstream organizations, and I'm talking about real mainstream, like police departments and military and places where you wouldn't think heart would have ever been accepted. And of course, there are millions of people around the world who've been touched by HeartMath in some way. So I guess, it's been an amazing ride, an amazing journey so far, but the best is yet to come, actually. When we look at the science, if you want me to answer that question, I'll make it simple. The heart does more than pump blood. It's actually an information processing center in our bodies, and it's sending information to the brain, throughout the rest of the body, and information coming from our hearts is actually critical to how we function as human beings. So once we got that understanding, we began to map out, how does it do that? What is it communicating? How does it communicate? And we were able to see through our research, and also research that existed, it was in the research literature around the world, but largely unknown. Combining all that, we could easily see that the heart communicates with us in 4 ways. One is, you mentioned it, there's a nervous system in the heart. It's actually studied through a field called neurocardiology. And neurocardiologists call it the brain and the heart. Very sophisticated part of our nervous system. It communicates with the brain. It sends information from a nerve pathway that starts in the heart, then goes up. It goes in through the lower centers of the brain, the medulla, the instinctual brain. Continues to go up into the brain, goes through the limbic system, the mid-level brain, where a lot of our emotional processing, emotional memory, those aspects take place. But then it even goes further. It goes all the way up into the neocortex, higher perceptual centers of the brain, creative centers in the brain, executive decision-making centers in the brain. And so it's sending this information up into the brain through this nervous system. Now, where it got even more interesting was this. The heart actually sends a lot more information to the brain than it ever gets from it. It is a conversation taking place between heart and brain, but the heart's doing most of the talking. And that was your first way. The second way was biophysical communication. Take your finger right now, anyone who's watching, place it on your wrist, and what you'll feel is your pulse. Pulse is a wave of energy created by the squeezing of the heart muscle. It pushes the blood through the veins and the arteries, and they call that the blood pressure wave. Blood pressure waves modulate depending upon how the heart is beating, and those modulations create physiological changes. For example, changes in the blood pressure wave change the electrical activity in the brain. So as our heart beats differently, we perceive differently. Our brain electrical activity changes, and that's your second way. Third way was one of these pieces of heart-brain communication that was in the literature, but I didn't know it, and I didn't know anybody else that did. The heart communicates with us hormonally. In 1983, it was reclassified. The physical heart was reclassified as part of our hormonal system. Who knew? Because it produced a number of very important and powerful hormones. One of those, for example, is called atrial peptide. Atrial peptide's job is to reduce the release of the stress hormone cortisol. Many people know that too much cortisol is not good for us. Well, guess what? We have a hormone being produced in the heart trying to help with that. It also produces another hormone that's become quite well known now. It's a regenerative, revitalizing hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin has been linked to emotional states like feelings of love and empathy and trust. And the heart is one of the main producers in the body of oxytocin. And that's your third way. So those are biological, and I call them hardwired biological communication. The fourth way is where it gets really interesting, where it's the most fun and cool for me. It's the energetic communication. The heart is an electrical organ. When we go to a doctor says, I'm going to do your electrocardiogram. Think about what that term says, electrocardiogram. They're measuring electricity produced by the heart. And the heart is the strongest source by far of electricity in our bodies. This electricity produced by the heart goes to every single cell in our bodies. We're bathing ourselves in this electrical energy all the time. It's also strong enough that it extends beyond our skin out into space. It creates an electromagnetic field around us in 360 degrees that can be measured about 3 feet outside the body with very traditional equipment, magnetometers that measure electromagnetic fields. This field, broadcasting out from our heart into space, is also changing all the time. And what changes it is our emotional state. If you or I or anyone listening is feeling angry and upset and frustrated, we're broadcasting that. It produces what's called an incoherent spectra in that field. That's the bad news. The good news is when we are feeling emotions like love or compassion or care or kindness or patience, Those kind of emotions produce a coherent field, and we're broadcasting that into space. So we're literally broadcasting our emotions. And why I think this is fascinating is now we move beyond biology into physics. Now we're taking a look at how do fields relate to one another. How does my field relate to yours right now, Matt, regardless of the boundaries of space? We're in different parts of the world. You're in Australia right now. I'm in California, but we are having a shared experience. And that same shared experience is being experienced by all the people who are listening and watching right now, and the ones that will watch in the future. They're not bound by time or space. And so now we have to look at what are these fields doing with one another? And that's where HeartMath's research is today in two main areas. One is energetic connectivity, and the other is social coherence research. So that's a long answer to your question, but hopefully it paints a picture for everyone listening about their physical heart and how amazing it is, how it is certainly more than a slavish pump, and how it relates to many of the spiritual and philosophical tenets that we've all heard and read about our whole lives.
Wow, Howard, that's an absolutely incredible answer to an opening question. I think that's pretty much blown everybody's minds at the moment who hasn't heard anything about this before, because it's such an important conversation. You're really stretching the conversation far and wide now about the heart. It's not just this organ that sits there. For starters, you've got some really grounded science in the biology behind the heart, but also you bring such important topics along in this conversation. So I want to explore a few of those right now. So we're talking here right now. I'm sitting here. We are having a shared experience. I'm obviously enjoying a lot of oxytocin in this engagement. I really enjoyed our conversations together. So talk a little bit about that for us. So what is this coherence that you talk about? Let's unpack that for a second. How do I feel, and how does that influence people around me? And how do I actually be aware of that? And how can I choose to change that if I'm in any given moment? Often we're not aware of those sorts of things. So where do we start here for those listening in?
Yeah, well, coherence is a state, a physiological state, and also a psychological one that we were able to determine and measure through looking at changes occurring in this heart-brain-body communication. You measure coherence through looking at changes in our heart rhythms. That's different than just heart rate like a fitness monitor. It's measuring the beat-to-beat changes in our heart rate and plots out these rhythms. And we could easily see that when we were experiencing, again, the type of emotions that are, we can call them less regenerative, common way of saying it. When we're upset and angry, when we produce those emotions, those heart rhythms go into chaos. Then conversely, when we switch it, they become smooth and ordered. If you can see it on a graph, and you can see it on the HeartMath websites or books or anywhere really, they look like rolling hills up and down. And when our heart rhythms shift into those patterns, what happens is we enter this heightened, efficient physiological state, which is called coherence. What that means is that all the body systems, major body systems, start to synchronize to this rhythmic beating pattern of the heart. It's respiration, digestion, immune system response, hormonal responses, and brain function. They all sync up. And when we're there, we're in a high-performance state. We are able to be more aware of everything in our environment. Our visual field expands. Our brains open up. We can see into things differently. We make better choices. All these things are happening physiologically inside the body. That state is triggered when we feel positive regenerative emotions, the same kind of emotions that have been associated with the word or concept heart for thousands of years. When you and I are here right now enjoying one another, enjoying the feeling of a connection and brotherhood that we have, that's a positive regenerative feeling. That's creating more coherence in us. If others are tagging into that right now, if they're feeling that as well, their coherence level increases. Coherence is a calm and balanced state, but it's not sleepy. It's not just this kick back and your eyes closed state. People get there through meditation, through prayer, through the various spiritual practices they have, but coherence is an on-the-go state as well. You can be in high coherence and be highly functional. For example, we train people all over the world in different ways, and different types of training programs and methods. One area we have trained in is athletes. Everything from professional hockey players to football players to soccer players, Olympians. We train them in coherence building techniques. Now, if we're training hockey players, they're not sitting around with their eyes closed. Those guys are out there on the ice and they're trying to do what they do. But if they're doing it from this more balanced place, they're more in control of their emotions. Their perceptions and ability to see into the game is different. And they have the ability to perform better. Reaction speed times improve. All that happens. So coherence is a really important state for us to be able to get into and keep it as much as we can on the go. We do it through a variety of ways. We have our own techniques at HeartMath, really simple but effective, powerful techniques built into all of our training programs, and all that's there for us. But there are others. As you know, we're involved in the community of personal growth and the leaders of it, and we know there's a lot of great material out there, a lot of great methods people can use to help themselves these days. And when they do, one of the ways it can be looked at and measured is it changes their coherence levels. And so when we do that, I think it's important because we're living in this era right now of extraordinary change, tremendous amount of uncertainty, tremendous amount of anxiety, and many people in fear. At the same time, there's an opening up. There's a community forming around the globe of all kinds of people. There's an awareness of the interconnectivity. There's a desire to facilitate positive change. All this stuff is happening at the same time. So I know for myself, if I don't find a way to maintain a certain balance in that, and be able to maintain a connection to my own dignity and my own nobility as I try to go through life in this time period, it can get rocky and tough pretty quick. So for me, coherence building practices, whether it's my meditations or techniques I use on the go, any of that, it all adds up to me, trying to feel like I'm leading a balanced, regenerative life and also making a contribution to the lives of others. So that's why, to me, coherence is important.
It's beautiful, Howard, and thanks for sharing that perspective again. And I want to just unpack for some of the second part of what you shared at the start of this conversation. And if you haven't heard that yet, guys, please go back and listen to the replay of this at some stage. It's really, really important conversation we're having here today with Howard Martin from HeartMath, all about heart intelligence, about the science of the heart, and about the bigger things that are about the heart. So Howard, just want to unpack for the science minds out there. So we understand that we can measure the heart. We understand that we've got traditional means that are widely accepted now in the scientific community, that we can measure someone's heart, magnetic field, how it expands out and can influence someone else's electromagnetic field next to them. Talk about this concept of time and space, because that makes sense if you're standing next to me, right? If you're 3 feet away from me, that makes sense. How does it make sense if you're on the other side of the world to me right now? Let's unpack that just for a minute.
Well, I'm certainly not an expert on the principles of quantum physics. That's somebody else is good at that. That's not necessarily me. But, in the studies that I have made on it and discussions I've had with scientists that are in that field, one of the principles of quantum physics is that, our concept of what time is and what space is changes rather dramatically. In some of the theories, there is no time really, and there is no distance in space. And there have been experiments done. People listening right now may have read about them, where they can take 2 particles and they can have those particles touch and relate, and then they take the particles and separate them by thousands of miles. They provide some sort of a stimulus to one particle in that part of the world, and they say that the same type of effect occurs in the particle that's thousands of miles away. So something's going on there where there's a connection. It doesn't have anything to do with what we have determined so far through our perceptions as time and space. So if that's true, let's just propose for a second that it is true and that the theories are correct. That means that, we are having an emotional connection right now, and there's an energetic field of some kind much larger than what we are, that is not really bound by space so much, and that we can feel each other and we can feel this connection in a different way. There's a term in poetry for that, I think, that I just remember, was things like love has no boundaries. It's not confined, and they were saying kind of like love is bigger than all of that. It doesn't have any boundaries to it. So there's a connection that happens there. And I think the time factor is interesting. Time is very confusing to me. If I see an interesting television show about time, usually by the time it's over, I'm more confused than I was before I watched it, to be honest with you. But it's saying basically time moves forward, time moves backwards. There's, lots of different relationships to what time is. We're only seeing what time may be through a very limited perception that we have as human beings, and that time isn't that way at all. So the same experience we're having right now for someone listening to this podcast, maybe 6 months from now, can still tag into that energy, or the energy that we're in right now, that we're helping to co-create right now, and tap right into that. It doesn't have anything to do with time. They can still feel it, just like we're feeling it right now in the moment. So that's not a very scientific unpacking of the question that you answered. But I think we have to look at, energetic fields are not limited. Even if there are some limitations on them, they're not limited as previously perceived. I think that opens the door for looking at how we all relate to one another globally and how we are all in this together. We are all impacting the world and being impacted by the world in similar ways. And I'll share very quickly a preview to a publishing of a study. I can't share much more about it because until the study is published, it's what's called embargoed. And they embargo it until it's published, and then it's public domain, and you can talk about it a lot. But there's a study that the Institute of HeartMath, our nonprofit's been doing, to where they had about several hundred people in different parts of the world wearing portable heart rate variability recorders over a 6 months period of time. And they were also at the same time, during that 6 months, they would randomly send them via email very simple psychometric surveys and say, answer these questions now or as soon as you can. And they would answer questions about how they were feeling. And what they were doing is correlating any potential changes they were seeing both physiologically and psychologically to a population of people in different parts of the world related to changes occurring in the solar radiation and its impact on the Earth's energetic fields. Let me back up so people don't get confused. Solar radiation impacts the Earth's energetic fields, ionosphere, geomagnetic field. Science knows they impact us. So what they wanted to know is when there's a change in these external parameters, is there anything similar going on with people? And what they found is that in the same exact time periods, the heart rate variability data would be very, very similar in these people in different parts of the world, as well as what they were feeling. That the psychological data from the self-reported surveys was also syncing up. So one of the lines I think that will be in the study, a layman's line, would be that it appears as if we are all synchronizing to something core, that there's a core signal emanating from the Earth that we are all synchronizing to. Well, so what? Well, so what is this? It means that, we're all in this together. We're all being impacted in similar ways, and we are all sort of in the same, same energetic field game that's going on, and that we contribute to that field, to how we react to it. And so I think it's interesting science, and there's more, and the study is certainly more than what I described. Interesting science is now showing that we are connected. We are one people, one yard, one planet, and that we're all playing on the same field. And I think that's important because it allows us to get a sense that we are not alone. I did a telecourse a couple of days ago, and it was about handling rapid change, and maintaining balance through rapid change. And I talked about that feeling of not being alone, of everybody sort of going through some challenges right now in various ways. Then I took questions, at the end of the call, and the questions were really an eye-opener for me because I realized how much people were in need of feeling that connection. People were expressing openly that they were afraid. As they looked at the changes happening in the world, they were afraid for themselves. They were afraid for their children. This was like the heartbreaking stuff. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I have trouble sleeping at night because I'm afraid for her and the world she's inheriting. And I realized, wow, people are needing support right now. They need to feel the hearts of each other. And I think that the science, again, goes back to showing some empirical understanding that increases the power of our belief that we are connected, that we're not in this alone, and that we can all work together in a more harmonious way.
So beautifully packaged there, Howard. And again, thanks for sharing that perspective with us. And I know that science is still catching up with the understanding of all these conversations about time and space. But we know very well that we're on the other side of the earth, and that whatever we feel right now produces and changes our actual biochemistry, which does reflect everything in the heart and our magnetic field. So there's a lot of science behind all of that. And I love that you just bring this to the conversation. And most importantly, as you say, it's not bound by time as well as space, because someone in the future can have that same release of oxytocin, feeling this conversation and have the same experience and contribute positively towards people around them as well. So it's a really solid conversation that you have from HeartMath, and I really appreciate what you guys have done over many, many decades actually to be able to bring us this intelligence, this understanding today. And I want to just unpack a little bit more that the conversation that you brought to the table just there, where we're all in this together, and now we're all connected. We're all our feelings contribute towards a collective feeling. It's a really important conversation for us to have right now. We're here talking about the bigger picture. We're here, all of our organisations work towards making a huge difference to the lives of billions on the planet. where do we go from here? Like, what do you see as the future? You're having calls, and we all have conversations all day, every day with people who are finding it so tough, so hard, whether it's how they feel, whether it's how they think, what they believe about the world. Where do we go from here on the planet? What's possible for us? What do you see coming in the future, and what do we need to do about it now?
Well, let me qualify my answer first. I get this question from smart guys like you sometimes in these interviews asking me, you talk about this future and the changes going on, the dimensional shift in consciousness and all that. What's it going to be like? And I realized after a while, I needed to come up with a really authentic, genuine, and accurate answer. And my answer is I don't know. And the reason I don't know, let me explain my reasoning behind that, is that my belief, as I began to look across the global landscape, and even just as importantly, maybe more importantly, what I actually feel inside, what my own intuition is saying, is that we are moving into an era of human unfoldment unlike anything we've ever seen before. That our potential and where we are actually moving is something that beyond our expectations. It's bigger than what we can imagine. An analogy I sometimes use is this. If you went up to someone sitting on a horse and buggy, let's say in 1875, and you said, hey, I've been hearing these rumors that some new transportation is going to be coming about. What do you think that's going to be like? Probably that guy would have been picturing in his mind a different horse or a different buggy, but not the airline industry. You couldn't see it. And I think that's where we are right now. It's like we're almost able to see around the corner, but we can't quite yet. We're trying to get these pictures of the future. We're trying to see around the corner, but we can't. We're not there yet. And we have to go a deeper level inside ourselves first in order to earn our way into that next level of knowingness about what the future will hold. But I think that the emergence of a new world is something that is obvious when you step back and move beyond some of the challenging pictures, which we often are so exposed to through the constant barrage of social media information and media information in general. We tend to, whether we think we do it or not, sometimes I think we consciously and unconsciously start buying into that picture. But when I step back and get above that some, I begin to see how many hundreds of millions of people there are around the world that are operating in such a different way, whose thoughts have changed, perceptions have changed, their behaviors have changed, their desires have changed. Their wantingness of connection and wantingness of cooperation is already there. It's already in place. And, you travel a lot around the world. I do as well. Everywhere I go, I run into these extraordinary people. And I'm going, how many there are? There are hundreds of millions of them. And a lot of them blow me away because I'm thinking, well, you've been doing this a long time, Howard. You've had all this support system around you all these years, and you still go through these stuff and struggle. And this person here doesn't have any of that, and they're manifesting behaviors that are like amazing, and I just see that something bigger than whatever books we've read or what teachers we've had or all that's fine, but there's something bigger than that happening in consciousness itself. And people are changing as a result of that. That is the cool part of the whole thing. So I think something big is going to happen, not in one big blast, but in a steady progression of unfoldments as we go into the future. Today, I would say to anyone watching now this: start manifesting in a casual way more of the genuine qualities of the heart in your daily interactions. And that's information that we've had our whole lives, but take it down a deeper level now in application. It's not hard to do. It's simply things like this. Demonstrate more kindness to others. Consider another's position before you determine how something should be. See if you can back off the judgments a little bit of people because they have differences or differences of opinion. Try to see into them a little deeper and do that through the eyes of kindness and appreciation. Now, this is stuff we've all read about. We've been to seminars. We've probably got some workbooks behind us back here where we journaled about it. That's all good, but now let's do it. Let's just be kinder to one another. Let's all get along. I go through conflict. I'm in a very active, dynamic business environment here at HeartMath. The executives don't always see things the same way, and as we shouldn't. If we're all in total agreement all the time, somebody's not thinking. And so sometimes, there's differences. There's things that can build up. And sometimes we'll find myself projecting into worry about that. Or I'm going into a meeting tomorrow and I'm going to have to deal with this, and I bet you it's going to be hard. I've tried to back that stuff down, to stay on the upside of things, and go into that same meeting I may have projected about and making sure that I'm in as kind and gentle and genuine a place as I can be. If it goes sideways, it goes sideways. But at least I went in there with an intention in my heart. So if people will do that, just be kinder to one another, more patient, more tolerant, more understanding, we'll find that next level of awareness that allows us to see around that corner into the future a little bit more. But we got to earn our way into it. And I think that the time is now for us to manifest the wonderful things that we already know and that we've experienced inside with just more consistency.
Incredible insight, as always, Howard. Howard, I just want to explore just a little down the left wing a little bit from what we talked about with the future there. I really love what you bring about us understanding, about us feeling, and about us being better ourselves to influence others in that way. And we're not being attached to the outcome. You go into a meeting feeling like you feel, whatever happens, not attached to the outcome. It's not for you to try and control that. What about what's coming at the moment? I had a great conversation the other day with someone I interviewed about this new field of virtual reality that's coming. In theory, we're doing a virtual reality thing right now where you're on the other side of the world. I'm experiencing something with you. We're releasing oxytocin and some other feel-good hormones that will then influence our electromagnetic field around us and those to the collective. This virtual reality conversation that's coming up, in the future, not too distant future, we're going to be able to sit on our couches here and pop some headsets on and go to the Bahamas together, and we can have some fun and play around, and we can have again the same release of hormones and things that can experience the same field if we're in flow, if we're synchronized, things happen. This is something that's coming, and it's coming soon. And even just in that same aspect, there's a lot of the kids who are coming up these days and growing up these days where parents are most fearful of about kids playing games, about kids being on the computers too much. They're experiencing these sorts of things. They may be in virtual games that are creating fear. If they're in shoot 'em up games, they may be creating happiness. If they're in connection games, this is a pretty big conversation when we're talking about the future. What do you sort of see here? What guidance or advice do you have for anyone from your perspective and from your experience for parents who are listening today with young kids, for what's happening and what's coming there? How do we navigate this new conversation that's here?
Well, hang on to your seat for starters. I've been reading about a lot of these things too, and a lot of what I'm reading is indicating that in terms of technology, any kind of technology, whether it's virtual reality, transportation technologies, you name it, is we think we're so sophisticated right now, but here's where we are. We're at the end of the beginning. It's just starting, and virtual reality is a good example. Virtual reality today is kind of clunky. It's you put on this big giant headset and you go into some other reality. But here's where it's going, and many listeners may not know this. It's moving into two other areas very quickly. One is called merged reality. That's when you have a virtual reality experience going on, but you're also in your own reality as well. A very simplified version of that would be the Pokemon phenomenon, where you're looking through your device and you're looking at this other reality, but you're doing it as you look around in your main reality. And that's called merged reality. So that's going to that's already moving past the Oculus Rift kind of an approach to virtual reality. But where this thing's probably going to go is all that's going to get leapfrogged. That stuff is going to get jumped right over. And it's going to move into relatively reality. Augmented reality is when we will have the images right in front of us. We're operating in our reality, but it's like we're in another one all at the same time. It's been really proposed that, if you're out doing a presentation like you and I do, that within 10 years, we won't be using a screen. There will be no more screens behind us with an image projected on it. Everything we're doing is going to be right out there in the air. And I'll tell you what, give you one data point on why I think this is happening very quickly. Investment. If anybody is listening now and understands business or been involved in investments, what it might take to raise, say, $2 or $3 million. Or if you're a bigger company and you're raising a second round to get 20 million or 50 million, it's a huge complex business deal. Well, there's a company in Florida in the United States. It started out as a relatively small company called Leapfrog, and they are involved in the creation of augmented reality. And the last number I read was so far they've taken in $1.3 billion in investment. That's how strongly the investment community feels about this company and their ability to execute on that concept. $1.3 billion in investment, which means they got plenty of money and all the resources on the planet that they possibly want to make this happen. So going back to your question, so all this new technology is coming. Everything from that to driverless cars to robotics, you name it, it's all going to be there. How are we going to play with that? We have to think about reinventing ourselves as humans. We have to be something different than we've been in the past. In terms of virtual reality, yeah, all that video gaming that goes on can be violent. A lot of the technologies that come out, the first thing that ends up being popular about them is they turn it into something sexual. It goes into all the areas of society and human nature that exist. It doesn't matter what it is, it's going to be interpreted through all those different filters. I think, however, that there's something really cool about the ability to connect emotionally through the same technologies, and that we will learn to relate differently to one another through virtual reality. That we can still have the same emotional connections, even though it may not be through our own physical form. It may be even an avatar form or whatever, but we'll still have the ability to communicate and to feel in these so dynamically unique ways. And so the potential of us meeting together, Matt, and then bringing along all of our friends who are with us today and doing this in the Bahamas in an environment that feels like that, we could turn that into something, couldn't we? We could turn that virtual reality into something that added to the experience, that added to the feeling of connection. And I think that's what's going to happen. As we reinvent ourselves as humans, we develop our new consciousness, we apply that consciousness to the mediums that the world shows that are available, something cool happens. Another analogy I'm thinking as I go, in my earlier life, I was a professional musician, a drummer. And in the middle of all that, in my career, along came these things called drum machines, and everybody started freaking out that you could do all these things with drum machines and they were going to replace drummers. And sure enough, they were getting, the recording studios were going, I don't need you this time. These guys are going to use the drum machine, and all that was happening. And at first it was like a freak out to me, like how could a machine do all of this? After a point in time, I embraced it and I saw drum machines as another percussion instrument. Another way for me to make rhythm happen. So it didn't replace what I felt about being a real drummer, but it gave me another way to express. So it didn't become a threat anymore. Now it was like really cool. Look at all the stuff I can do with this drum machine. Look at all the things and then I started like triggering drum machines off of my real drums, and all this, stuff happened in my live performances where I'd be able to click on things and bring in a whole percussion section and all that. And it turned into this really cool, fun adventure. But new technology is like that. And when virtual reality comes along, it's going to be a lot said about how it's separating us, how it's taking us out of our lives and putting us in these virtual worlds. Yeah, some of that will happen. But it can also be used as a tool to connect us. So my guidance would be hang on for the ride, follow your heart, and try to use whatever shows up in our lives as a way of expressing more of our true heart, our true selves. And I think if we use it that way, that's what we'll get back out of it.
Such a beautiful perspective, Howard. And again, I thank you for everything that you're sharing on this. Like, the embracing the new, embracing and integrating new things that are coming is such an important conversation. So thanks for sharing that perspective with us. Howard, this has been a conversation. We've kind of ended up going outside the left field as we tend to in these chats. But that's what we do here, and it's important to have these conversations, I think. So just bring it back down to earth for a minute. For those listening in right now who are still sitting there at the moment in their lives, who might be finding it tough, they might be having a hard relationship, they might be having tough times at work, maybe they're having financial stress and other things in their lives. Where do we start? Can you just give us a first starting point? I know we've talked about the concepts behind it. Can you give us something tangible? What can people do right now, listening to this in their lounge room or wherever they're listening in right now? What can people do right now to start? Where do we start here?
Well, one of the things I like to say is, there's a place inside your own heart, that's really kind of associated to it this way. It's your own best friend. It's the most reliable guy that you or I or anyone has to helping make decisions that we make, big and small, and overcoming our challenges. And we can learn to make contact with that because it's really there. I mean, I think that heart got written off somewhere along the way as Valentine's cards and all that, but it's not what it is. It's really our core of our authentic self, and it's a true source of guidance and wisdom that we have inside ourselves. And that can be dusted off. So the starting point would be things like this. Recognize, first of all, that, and honor that the heart is something important that you have. That's step one. It's not just write it off, say, no, there's something here. And then second thing would be to know that it's always there. It never goes away. We go away from it, is what happens. But the return home now is quicker than it used to be. So here's a little practice I can give everybody. There's an inner state that exists that's heightened now. It's amplified right now. That would be the state of ease, E-A-S-E. Take it easy state. What ease is this feeling inside yourself that has more liquid flow to it, that begins to take some of the rough edges and corners off of life, like those relationship problems or those problems at work or the things you mentioned, Matt. It begins to smooth out those edges a little bit so that they're not quite as tough and intense. And it gives us like a quiet doorway into our own inner presence, our inner peace. So it opens the door for that. And you can learn to tap into that by just sort of breathing the feeling of ease, a liquid feeling in and out through the area of your heart. And learn to sort of tune into it, just as if you were tuning into a radio station. Just tune into that feeling of inner ease, E-A-S-E, and just sort of breathe that feeling in and out through the area of the heart. As you do that, you begin to open up more of the qualities of the heart. And it can lead people to a deeper feeling of self-security and a feeling that, life can be tough at times, and it is. But it leads to a sense of well-being, that things are going to be okay and that we can make it through this. Sometimes inner dialogue can change. I know in my life when I've had challenges, I would have to go deeper. And as I did, I would have thoughts like, this is a really tough situation, and I'm really not sure how I'm going to get through it. And then the other thought would come in behind it would be, but you know what? I'm a resilient person, and I've been through tough situations before, and I got through them. I'll get through this one. And that's the voice of the heart beginning to speak. That's your best friend saying, look, it's okay, little dude. You got it in you. You can do it. So breathe that feeling of inner ease as you can in and out through the area of the heart. Another aspect which I touched on earlier in our conversation was just be kinder to life and to others, and especially be kind to yourself. Give yourself the gift of self-compassion. Don't feel guilty about that. Recognize that we're all in this together, that you're a good person doing the best you can. Life is life. It's got ups, it's got downs, it has challenges in it. Don't feel bad or like you've done anything wrong. And if you find that you're not meeting your expectations, recognize that, look, it isn't easy. And then find that best friend conversation and have that compassionate talk with your own best friend, your heart. Let it give you that comfort to let you know that things are really all right and that you'll be okay. And if people can practice those kind of concepts a little bit, whether they remember all the words I've said or not, but just know that you've got it inside you right here. It's there for you. It's there to help you make contact with it. Then things can get easier. Challenges don't magically just poof go away. We still have to go through what we have to go through, but we can go through it easier, with an easier ride to it when we approach it all from the heart.
Beautiful words, Howard, and thanks for sharing that again with us. And you guys at HeartMath are doing some incredible things and have been for decades, and you've got plenty of tools and resources available to help us with this exact thing, right? Can you just share a little bit about what's new at HeartMath? What are you guys up to, and some things, some places where people can start as well?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say, please go to heartmath.com and just click on one of the links at the top where you can get information, whatever. You don't get bombarded by us by marketing information all the time. It's a real nice balance of information that comes. So you allow us to communicate with you. And the reason I'm asking, especially for you to do that now, is that things are changing quickly here at HeartMath. And how are you going to know about that if there's no way for us to let you know? We're in the midst of not only evolution here at HeartMath, but revolution. We have been around for a long time. You've alluded to that, Matt. And we have great respect amongst a lot of people in the world, and I think that's something to be proud of. But it's not the end game. We have to keep moving forward, moving on. The world is in greater need now for the kind of work that we do than it ever has been. And so we are reinventing. There'll be new branding in HeartMath. You'll see a new look and a new feeling coming from even just looking at our website or the brand or whatever we put out to the world. A different type of energy manifesting and being sent to the world that way. There are new programs and services we have available. One I'll mention now, check it out on the heartmath.com website. It's called Ad Heart Daily Calls. For a very low subscription fee, people call in 5 days a week. If they can't make the live call, it's recorded and they can listen to it later. It's a 15-minute call. And it's a HeartMath leader or trainer on the call every morning saying, look, let's talk about this today. And maybe talking about, how they've applied appreciation. Yesterday I talked about the power of community. We talked for about 5 minutes, and then we do a little heart-focused meditation together for 5 minutes, a little Q&A. And what people get out of that is a couple things. One is they're able to sort of maintain a more consistent connection to themselves, to their own heart. The second thing is they are participating in a shared experience. There's an energetic community that's there with that, and that can be helpful in giving people that feeling of support. And it helps people move forward into the day with being the best they can be, starting out the day, or even if they listen at the end of the day, it goes over to the next day. So that's called Add Heart Daily Calls, and I recommend those to people who are listening to try those out. It doesn't cost much money. It's a low subscription fee. You can try it out for a month and see how it feels to you. Other new things, we're going to have a new certification program coming out soon where people can get certified, become part of the HeartMath mission, and it won't be as expensive, super expensive. Our technology, which has been a big part of our offering to the world over the last 10 or 15 years, measures heart rhythms, scores them for the degree of coherence. It's called Inner Balance Trainer. It's been available for 3 or 4 years on iOS devices, Apple devices. Now with a new sensor we've just come out with, it's Bluetooth. Now it's available on Android devices as well. So anybody with a cell phone or a pad now can access this technology. And it's another assistive technology. It helps us make that connection, helps us learn to regulate our emotions and move through life with more poise and more ease and more grace. And now we have it for everybody. So that's examples of a lot that's going on. Internally, a lot's happening as well. Keeps me busy. Obviously, attend seeing a HeartMath speaker somewhere live if you can. I still think virtual reality is going to be great, and this medium's great. But Matt, you're well aware of the power of being together physically, right? So those of you listening today, a couple of weeks from now, I'm in Miami at the World Happiness Summit. That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? A whole lot of interesting speakers at the World Happiness Summit. I'm there. Not long after that, I'm at Kapalo, with Whole Being Institute, doing a positive psychology conference. I'll be at that one. June, Cryon event, keynoting there, big event there, their annual international event. It just goes on. So check out where I'll be, where people like Deborah Rosman or Dr. Roland McCready, other HeartMath spokespeople will be. And let's get together live. I think live events now have a different meaning. We can get all the information we want about a speaker or an author like we're doing today. There's videos, dozens of videos and interviews of me, for example, online. Just Google me and you can listen to me till you're talking with a Southern accent. But the difference is being live together. That's where it gets another level of let's just call it magic unfolds, when we are able to have the shared experience in the same physical space. So that is just a lot going on, and go to heartmath.com and let us communicate with you. Just click on one of the things to receive information, and that way you'll keep up with the story, because the story is unfolding. On the nonprofit side, the Institute side, they're doing more advanced work on social coherence research. They're also doing a lot of very interesting work, and will be going on into the next years, working around things like severe trauma, working with Syrian refugees, and a lot of the nonprofit work they do, in particular Syrian refugee children who are seriously traumatized. And so there's a really important piece of HeartMath that's happening at the nonprofit level as well. Now we're trying to serve society and address some of these extraordinarily challenging global needs that are there. So that whole story is part of what's unfolding. We've talked about some of what we've done in the past today. I think, Matt, when we have an interview in the future, there'll be new things to talk about, new stories to tell as this life adventure continues to unfold. And I'm happy to be a part of it, and appreciative beyond words of being a part of HeartMath. And to everybody listening, all I am is just one little man who's trying to do what I can to help people connect and with their own hearts so they can experience less suffering and more fulfillment. That's basically all I do.
Well, I love everything you do, Howard, and all the magic that comes together when we do get to experience lifetime. So I encourage everyone to go and check out Howard wherever he's in the world. everyone from HeartMath. If you haven't yet visited heartmath.com, please go check it out. There's some really great resources and some really great tools there to help you if you're in a position where you're struggling to actually understand what it means, or to feel good about life, or to be in a space where you feel more happy than more sad, or more upset, or more depressed, or more angry. There's some incredible resources at your disposal now at heartmath.com. So please go check that out. Thank you all so much for being here. You are on the Health Lounge. We've been here talking today with Howard Martin, all about the heart. In fact, we've covered pretty much everything that we probably could.
Virtual reality in the heart.
In the context of the heart. So, Howard, I really value the insight and the perception and the perspective that you bring to every conversation, big and small. We love the work that you're doing at HeartMath, across the board with everything. Even pushing into the fields of the future technologies, but also the real heart-to-heart work that you guys do. So, on behalf of everyone listening, thank you so much for all that you guys have done for many, many years for all of us moving forward.
Take care, everybody. Love you big time.
Thank you so much for joining us, for supporting this gathering of world experts, thought leaders, and innovators looking to change the course of the health and wellness of the human race, and for being empowered and actively committed to your own health in mind, body, and spirit. I'm Matt Riemann, and on behalf of all of us at the Personal Health Summit, we thank you for tuning in, and we wish you the utmost personal health and happiness in every day of your life.